Given their penchant for these random acts of surreal violence, someone said, it may be difficult for our viewers to understand why you continue to insist that this phenomenon isn't a form of terrorism. That Dr. Rambali smiled. There is always a point at which the terrorists cease to manipulate the media gestalt, a point at which the violence may well escalate, but beyond which the terrorists have become symptomatic of the media gestalt itself. Terrorism, as we ordinarily understand it, is innately media related. The Panther moderns differ from other terrorists precisely in their degree of self consciousness, in their awareness of the extent to which media divorces the act of terrorism from the original sociopathic intent. That was William Gibson from Neuromancer, and this is AllMinucOne. I'm Bill. Please, if you folks like my content, hit that like button, share, subscribe. You know the deal. Leave a comment. I'll try to reply back. Good, bad, or indifferent. All right, folks. So today I wanted to talk about this plot to overthrow the governor of Michigan. Plans to kidnap Whitmer, overthrow government, spoiled officials say. And this is a little bit more detailed than what I covered yesterday in the quick shot. I want to get one thing straight very briefly, and that is the distinction between what is left wing and what is right wing. And so the terms originated from left and right from the French Revolution. It says, when the National Assembly is divided, its supporters of the king to the president's right and supporters of the revolution to his left. And then we began to recognize each other. Those of us who were loyal to the religion and the king took up positions to the right of the chair so as to avoid the shouts, oaths, and indecencies that enjoyed free reign in the opposing camp. So the left-right divide, folks, comes from out of the French Revolution directly, the whole idea of it, based on where the assembly members sat. Now, when I speak of left or right, and I like to clarify this all the time, I mean liberty versus tyranny. Now, you might say, well, Bill, weren't the French revolutionaries trying to bring about liberty? No. They were trying to bring about mob rule, and they had a tyrannical reign. It was known as the Reign of Terror. Also, note that when the American revolutionaries left the English, they were partially conservative, but they were a revolutionary movement, which would have made them left-wing. But they wanted to keep much of what they had obtained from English common law and the idea of a constitution, and much which they had to maintain from a classical education that came from the ancient world, understanding the good and bad parts of government over the years. Were they revolutionaries? Were they leftists? Yes. But they were also, to some degree, conservatives trying to return to an age and a time before. Now, you could call them, perhaps in modern terms, reactionaries. But they weren't quite reactionaries, as they were trying to make something new. So this thing gets muddled. But as far as the American context goes, we can only count from the time the United States became its own nation. And from the time, a few years later, that the the current Constitution was placed, because before that we had the Articles of Confederation. So people that are on the right, conservatives, are trying to conserve, if you would, that Constitution. People that are on the left are revolutionaries. So in this example specifically, in this context, we could say that these folks that were arrested were probably, we could consider them right wing, although they were considered, or would consider themselves, anarchist. And this is where things get muddled. This is where things get muddled on the spectrum. But no matter what, realize that the establishment government, the government that has been established within the federal government and through many of the state governments and local governments, that is largely democratically controlled and controlled by the regressive left, that is actually anti-Constitution and is moving away from the Constitution. They are the radicals, even though they've had control. Because we can make the argument that a conservative actually wants to conserve their power. But see, this is all semantics. This is all wordplay. And we need to be specific if we're going to understand each other. So again, I will state, when I say right wing, I'm talking about people who are liberty-minded, people who are minarchists, such as myself, federalists, and constitutionalists, classical liberalism. People who are left-wing are communist, socialist, fascist, maybe monarchists, depending on how you look at it. But their whole idea is revolution, might makes right, and the idea of mob rules, which is what democracy is, folks. So, with all that said, let's read the article. It says, federal agents said Thursday they thwarted a plot to violently overthrow the government as well as kidnap and harm Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer. A conspiracy that included visits to her home in northern Michigan and training with firearms and explosive devices. The alleged plot mainly involved 6 conspirators unhappy in part about Whitmer's coronavirus restrictions, calling her a tyrant. They wanted to create a self-sufficient society free from what they called unconstitutional state governments and discussed plans to storm the Capitol and take hostages according to the FBI documents filed in court. Organizers allegedly met starting in June, including a Second Amendment rally in Lansing and in Grand Rapids shop basement accessed through a secret door hidden under a rug. That's pretty old school if you ask me. Trapdoor. The plot also included at least 7 members of a Michigan militia known as the Wolverine Watchmen, accused by state officials on Thursday of targeting police, making threats to instigate civil war, and helping to plan Whitmer's kidnapping, according to the state and federal officials. So some people have noted here that because they were targeting police and against police, that this is really no different than Antifa or BLM. And this is where I often say that if we were not looking at political factions, political tribes, and we were looking at issues across the aisle, we would find there is far more agreement than disagreement. The media, as well as our politicians, hype things up to an extent that everyone is ultra-tribal. The politicians specifically, in the fact that they have pretty much solidified the two-party system in the United States. Now, I've stated it before, and I will state it again. I am not an advocate of a two-party system. I'm not an advocate of political parties. I don't believe in them. I believe that they create a us versus them mentality. And I always say my favorite sport is politics, or the only sport that I follow is politics in the UFC. Because that's what politics are, folks. They're a team sport. It's not about you. It's not about taking care of you. It's about the sport of things. It's about which team wins and which team gets to be in power. Now, I believe the Republicans are less so this way. They see ground all the time to the Democrats. They're not very strong, but with President Trump, they have some new life, new blood in them. Let's keep reading, though. The federal court filing alleges the conspirators twice conducted surveillance at Whitmer's personal vacation home in northern Michigan and discussed kidnapping her to a secure location in Wisconsin to stand trial for treason prior to November 3rd election. Several members talked about murdering tyrants and taking a sitting governor, an FBI agent wrote in an affidavit. The group decided they needed to increase their numbers and encouraged each other to talk to neighbors and spread their message. After the charges were revealed, Whitmer slammed President Donald Trump for failing to condemn in strong enough terms hate groups such as the far-right Proud Boys, whom he told to stand back and stand by during the debates last week. The Proud Boys are not white supremacists, folks. This is media garbage propaganda. They don't even know what they're talking about, or they're just trying to manipulate your mind. And that's the thing, is you always have to take what the media says with a grain of salt. I tell you, you listen to me, you watch me, whatever, take what I have to say with a grain of salt. Look it up for yourself. Study it yourself. Go in depth, though. Don't look on the surface. Don't scratch the surface. This story is too new for me to bring up deeper details, but I thought that this, from the Detroit News, was quite thorough. Also, note, it's Detroit. It's the Detroit News. They're going to have a left bias. Bottom line, they probably love Whitmer and her lockdowns. I think she is a tyrant. I think she's insane. She wanted power. She wanted more power. When they tried to take her power away from her, she said, don't strip my powers. When the Supreme Court said, we're going to take your, what you did was unconstitutional, she said, well, I have 21 days to mess with it. And then finally the state prosecutor said, well, we're not going to prosecute anybody on any of these things. And just as I said yesterday in the quick shot that I made about this is what happens when you push people. You push people, you push them, and they finally snap. It takes a very strong person not to snap. Hate groups heard the president's word not as a rebuke, but as a rally cry and a call to action, the Democratic governor said. I doubt that. I'm pretty sure these aren't hate groups. There are people who don't like your tyranny. Now, I'm not defending them because I don't think that violence is a appropriate means of action. But and this is quite crazy. That's why I'm talking about it. It's quite interesting as well. She also warned those who threaten violence, we will find you, we will hold you accountable, and we will bring you to justice. No duh. Unless you're Antifa or BLM, then we'll just leave you be. The federal affidavit first reported by the Detroit News was filed hours after the team of the FBI agent raided a Heartland Township home Wednesday and comes amid investigation of the death of Metro Detroit man killed during a shootout with FBI agents. Let's go there real quick. It says Ruby Ridge. Here, let's see, guys, so you can see it. Ruby Ridge echoes and deadly Madison Heights FBI shooting. By the way, I can't recall the gentleman's name, but the gentleman that was involved in Ruby Ridge just pretty much wanted to be left alone. He was sort of a separatist, whatever it is that he wanted to call himself. He wanted to live out in the middle of nowhere. Hey, I had similar aspirations. And the federal government went after him and shot his son and then killed his wife and his baby son in her arms, if I'm not mistaken. And so this guy was allegedly a part of that. The FBI then later on decided that they were going to try and improve their look, how they appeared to the public because of that big mistake. And the man was the main party at Ruby Ridge was acquitted of all charges, and I believe the FBI had to pay him a grand sum of money. So the FBI then decided they were going to go after the people in Waco and David Koresh based on child abuse charges, potential pedophilia, which David Koresh probably, seemingly was. I don't know if you want to call it pedophilia, because the girl, I'm pretty sure, was pubescent at least, but she was young, like 14 or 15. That was supposedly one of his wives. But they went after them, and they basically killed everyone in the compound that did not leave. And, of course, that was a horrible look for them. And this is a big problem with law enforcement. We should be focusing, folks, on certain laws, not on just, people we think we don't like. If people aren't complaining and they want to be left alone, then leave them be. Let them be. This is where, like I said, I'm a minarchist. I want people to be free. I want people to have as much freedom as they want, as long as they're not screwing with somebody else. And if someone's voluntarily doing something, then it's voluntary. And for you to come in and say, well, I know better than they do, and they're taking advantage. Maybe they were, maybe they weren't. I don't know, folks. And really, neither do you. Sometimes it's clear, but often it is not. Life, unfortunately, is not so black and white. So let's get back here. Michigan Attorney General Diana Nessel, federal and state officers on Thursday detailed. It said, said that reads weird. Detailed charges against 13 people in what they described as an elaborate plans to kidnap Whitmer. That would have been epic, though. I will say that. Again, I'm not encouraging this, but man, if that had happened, that would have been absolutely epic if someone pulled something like this off in our day and age. Of course, they would have been manhunted and everything else. It would have been crazy. The nature of the case is rather unprecedented, Michigan State Police Colonel Joe Gasper said at the news conference. But it does send a very vivid reminder that while we may be in a period of discourse, possibly even divisiveness and fighting across the nation, law enforcement stands united, Gasper said. The investigation is the result of months of work that accumulated Wednesday night and the execution of a series of search warrants and arrest warrants, both in-state and out-of-state, related to acts of terrorism under Michigan state law. And here it's a picture of one of the gentleman's homes was raided. And that's how you... That's interesting, but that's how you kind of do it, folks, as you go in on unexpected ways sometimes. Or you bust that out, you throw in a flashbang, and then you come through the front door and the back door. Tactics. The conspiracy described by the FBI specifically involves 6 people, including Ty Garbin, 24, whose home was raided by agents in Heartland Township late Wednesday night. The affidavit filed in federal court details probable cause to charge the 6 men with conspiring to kidnap Whitmer, who identified by name include, there's some names. So a few of these folks are rather young, but it is what it is. Now, this guy here, this is a TikTok or Facebook post, or no, this is Instagram, looks like, that he, it says TikTok. I don't use TikTok, folks, so I have no idea. That he made some statements. I don't think his statements were that crazy. In fact, I'm going to let him speak for himself. Or not. Okay, well, that's the way things want to go. They do have quotes in this article, because I did read this before I decided to pull this up. Fox, Garbin, Franks, blah, 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 will initially appear in federal court Thursday and are now withheld bond pending detention hearings. The conspiracy charges each is facing is punishable by up to life in prison. Now, one thing I do want to say here, without bond, well, there were people attacking federal courthouses, federal government facilities, people attacking police precincts all across the country, and all of these riots that can still continue today. And some of these riots have gone out into suburbia. We saw that just last night. Why aren't these people being held without bond? When they were taken down in Lancaster, the rioting disappeared, and they were held on like $1 million bond or something crazy. But then the bonds were dropped because of, the idea that it was excessive. Well, you don't have to grant bond, depending on the nature of your crime. But I do find it interesting here that because it was directly involving attacking the government would be extra heavy-handed upon them. But only in the case that these people would be, considered right-wingers, if you would. Now, these aren't my kind of right-wingers. I mean, we can get into the issue of racism, and racism is can be on the right or the left, but I think it's primarily a left-wing idea because it's a collectivist idea. People like Richard Spencer want, socialism. He's voting for Biden, folks. That's not a joke. He is voting for Biden. He debated Sticks, Sex, and Hammer the other week on the Kill Stream, and he is absolutely serious. So, I do find it interesting, though, that these people would be held while, hundreds, maybe thousands of other people have been released over and over again just to burn and loot and create chaos and terrorism in the streets. All because they have a left-wing proper, according to the media, academia, and much of the Democratic establishment, that is the Democratic Party. They have the proper politics, or better yet, the proper religion. So it says, all of us stand here today today, we want the public to know that the federal and state law enforcement are committed to working together to make sure violent extremists never succeed with their plans, particularly when they target our duly elected leaders. Aha. Now, that again, interesting because they don't do this with Antifa. So this goes to his quotes. He says, wake up. He says, through confidential sources, undercover agents, and clandestine recordings, federal agents tracked the 6 men during the planning and kidnapping of Whitmer as they communicated over encrypted message platforms using code words and phrases in an attempt to avoid detection by law enforcement. The group also allegedly participated in field exercise that included detonating an improvised explosive wrapped in shrapnel to test its capacities. He said, Costera of Clayton Township posted several videos on TikTok, including one in which he was wearing a Hawaiian shirt and trademark clothing of a member of the anti-government Boogaloo movement. Okay, folks, well, let's cover this real quick. The Boogaloo boys are largely a joke. There are a lot of people that will wear this as sort of a badge or uniform. You had Tim Kennedy on Joe Rogan the other week wearing a Hawaiian shirt, saying specifically that he is wearing it because he wants to. Because he was told he's not allowed to because the Boogaloo thing. Folks, you have to learn to understand the difference between internet chatter and reality. There's a lot of anonymous internet chatter of silly people out there with silly ideas. And some of their ideas, they kind of mean, but they probably would never act on. And again, let's look at, the anti-government Boogaloo movement. What is Antifa? They say they're anarchists. They're anti-fascist. They're anti-government. They want to burn the establishment down. Are they not an anti-government movement? Have they not attacked governors and mayors primarily mayors and courthouses and police precincts? Have they not attacked people in the streets randomly? Have they not attacked people at their homes? Yes, they've done all that. See, this sort of framing really disgusts me by the media. And we can talk about, and I play on both sides of this, guys, because I'm not an ideologue. I'm not going to sit here and root for violence from people that may have some alignment with me politically, because they're freedom-loving people. In my mind, this goes too far. I mentioned the other day, if there was an occupation, a true occupation, like police literally patrolling the streets constantly, you had military people that could just come in and search your house constantly and do whatever they want. And I don't mean the handful that happens across America. I mean every single citizen. Then I could see the uprising happen. And then I could see that as legitimate. Now, I won't be participating in it personally, and has nothing to do with cowardice. It's because I just don't personally believe in those and doing such a thing religiously. But it is a fact of the matter that what has been going on this entire year is going to stir people up. And when you have examples like Antifa on the left going on, continuing and not being stopped, and BLM and all those things, and people who are right-leaning, or these people being anarchists, but right-leaning anarchists, you have people like this see it and they go, well, why can't I get away with it? Why can't I do what they're doing? Why can't I do this or that? Oh, I'm going to make a bigger splash than these folk. It says the price of freedom is eternal vigilance, Costera said in one video, and the indifference to this notion is the means by which the people can and will secure their own oppression. Wake the F up. Well, there's nothing ominous about this statement. In fact, the statement I 100% believe in. It is vigilance. It doesn't mean that you have to go and kidnap governors and kill police officers. It means you need to pay attention to who you're voting for. You need to run for office. You need to be involved politically. You need to do something, or you need to just be a guy on the internet like me speaking out with a voice who has a very small audience right now, but hopefully, what I have to say impacts somewhere and somebody. Former U.S. Rep. Mike Rogers, a former FBI agent who chaired the House Intelligence Committee, said that the conspirators had taken really extensive steps to put out their plan into action, which was obviously very, very troubling. But again, where is the infiltration of Antifa? They are organized, folks. Project Veritas has infiltrated them. Like, they have websites. I've literally met Antifa members. I went at a Halloween party in Arlington the other year at my wife's former residence. Her former roommates were having a Halloween party, and this guy showed up. Funny, because he's an Antifa member. He was also going to Georgetown University. So very, very underprivileged individual there. And we were with a bunch of mainly liberty-minded people, and there was a bunch of buzz in the house about how there was a communist there and whatever else, and I just thought it was funny. I actually I shared a few cigarettes with a guy out on the porch. Didn't really talk to him much about it, but I think he was like kind of surprised. I thought maybe he thought there was going to be more to it, but I don't know. But then I talked to another guy who's from Australia who was also going to Georgetown, and he was talking about our systemic racism and thought it was crazy. And I'm like, dude, that's all media propaganda. Like, get out of here. Mind you, all these were obviously young people. I'm much older. My wife's a bit younger than I am. So let's see here. I feel for the governor and her family. Politics is bad enough these days. To have to put up with somebody threatening to kidnap and probably kill you for some deranged political cause is over the top for sure. Well, again, what about Antifa? What about Black Lives Matter? I mean, I agree with you, bud. But why aren't we taking care of those problems? My heart goes out to her and her family, said Rogers, and how Republican. He said, it seems that authorities appear to have a solid case against the accused. They've got a level of evidence inside the organization that is going to be hard to deny, said Rogers, noting information from the undercover agents, informants, as well as bugged phones and intercepted data conversations. It looks like the evidence was overwhelming, and they got to the point where they said, okay, we don't want to take the chance that they're actually flipped the switch here and went and did it. We should be concerned about adding, blah, 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 blah. So it talks about more crimes. I kind of want to get down here. Yeah. And it was talking about the case that I brought up earlier from Ruby Ridge. Allport is believed to have been involved with many other people accused of conspiring to kidnap Whitmer or violently overthrow the government. A law enforcement sources told the news Allport died of multiple gunshot wounds during a shootout with the FBI agents in the parking lot of Texas Roadhouse at about 4:30 p.m. Friday near John R. and 12 Mile. He had a violent, turbulent life. Allport served an 11-year prison sentence for shooting at two police officers as a Boogaloo adherent and played a minor role in the infamous Ruby Ridge standoff in 1992. One of the darkest chapters in federal law enforcement history. Yeah, it sure was, because they screwed up royally. So it says the Watchmen, separately, Nestle on Thursday announced state charges against several other individuals. See, these are state charges, not federal charges, as the 7 other men. State's Anti-Terrorist Act, all of whom are in custody and linked into militia groups Wolverine Watchmen. In a total, 19 state felony charges for firearms and terror-related acts were filed by Nestle against 7 individuals known to be members of the associates of the Wolverine Watchmen. Real quick, whatever happened when, again, in the Chaz, and there were like 7 people that were shot and killed in Chaz. What happened to the leaders? What happened to the ringleaders there? What happened to the people handing out guns to folks? Where did that go, folks? And I'm juxtaposing this because, like, we need law and order. We need civility. We need conversation. We need dialect. But where did that go from those people? I haven't seen anything from it. And trust me, I follow a lot of people, a lot of news sources, and a lot of stuff. What is going on with these prosecutors just letting people go constantly? And this will be the thing in the next debates. Guarantee it. They're supposedly not happening. Maybe they will. I don't know. But this will be the thing. They'll bring up, what about the plot, the right-wing plot? And it's like, okay, fine. I concede. There was a group, 13 people. What about the thousands of people who have been rioting, looting, setting arson, and murdering people in the streets, threatening people in their homes in suburban neighborhoods? What about them? It's okay because they're left wing and lefties get to do whatever they want. They have liberal privilege. Maybe that's what they have. I don't know. It's insane. It says the individual, including Paul Bellar, a bunch of people's names, doesn't really matter. You guys read it for yourself if you want. The suspects are alleged to have called on group members to identify the home address of law enforcement officers in order to target them, made threats of violence to instigate a civil war leading to societal collapse, and engaging in planning and training for the operation and attack of the state capitol building and kidnapping government officials, including Whitmer, according to statements from Nessel's office. Again, what is the difference between the groups? Civil war and societal collapse. You think the left isn't looking to do that right now? Like, where is the big story about the leftist doing these things? And I mean, you have a few people covering it on the ground. You have to follow them on Twitter. You have someone like Andy No, who's been covering this for years. You have people like Tim Pool, who doesn't cover things on the street anymore, but he covers a lot of the news. But, I remember watching Tim Pool back in the day. Pretty sure it was him, covering back in the day the Anaheim riots, which mainstream media didn't even talk about. Most people aren't even aware of. There has been a disturbing increase in anti-government rhetoric and the reemergence of groups that embrace extremist ideologies. Yeah, they're called Antifa and BLM. The groups on the other side that would consider themselves right-wing do see themselves as enemies of that. But they're not the ones out in the streets threatening people, standing in their face, chanting at people on the sidewalks, and burning down buildings or murdering cops. They might have plotted to murder cops. Don't get me wrong. I'm not excusing their behavior. But who walked up to a police car the other week? In LA, I think it was, right? Shot 2 police officers in their car in their face and they ran off. Of course, the same criminal was arrested later on, found out to be the suspect. These groups often seek to recruit new members by seizing on the moment of civil unrest. Whatever. This has been building, folks, for years. I've actually been wanting to do a channel for quite a long time. And I just been busy with other stuff. I, was doing school. I had to take a temporary job I got injured on. And then I got a new job and just all kinds of stuff. Back to school and then COVID lockdowns. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to do this stuff. I'm just going to do it because it's my hobby. It's what I do. I pay attention to all this stuff. I know what's going on. I can see it. It's very obvious. I look I through the internet forums. I see what people are talking about. I follow various people. I get what's going on here. This unrest is on both sides. Listen to Michael Malice. Watch his Rubin Report interview from the other year where he talks about the certain people on the right who want to go towards monarchy and whatever else. They're neo-reactionaries. I do a podcast, a live show every Wednesday at 7 p.m. The Ends Justify the Memes. And I do that with a guy who, he's not sold on it, but he's like, yeah, I kind of think maybe monarchy's a better answer. I don't. I think the problem is that we keep talking about democracy, and we don't live in a democracy, folks. We live in a system of checks and balances known as a republic, a constitutional republic, which we don't obey. In any case, there's a lot more here, but I didn't intend to make this video too long for this particular segment. So I do want to leave it there. You can go find that. Again, that was from the Detroit News. There are a lot of articles about this. New York Times wrote an article about it, of course. Of course, you can find people covering this kind of stuff on Twitter. I'm not huge. I don't really do Twitter, guys. But, like, it's great for a news aggregate. I mean, it's what I used Facebook for years for. But Facebook got ridiculous as well, especially with their manipulation of algorithms. I don't think Twitter does that as much. But in any case, as usual, you guys can find me at ends_justify_memes on DLive every Wednesday night. We do a live show. It's usually off the cuff. We do, a stupid meme cast news segment in the beginning, have some laughs, usually have a couple beers on stream. I'm not drinking this month. It's sober October, but whatever. And yeah, man, like if you want to watch those, you missed them, go over to the Ends Justify the Memes on YouTube. We have replays there. You can subscribe to me. Yeah, I don't really care about that, guys. Firewall thing. Subscribe to me on Subscribestar if you want. If not, whatever. I'm going to keep doing this regardless. Look, like, share, subscribe, do all that stuff. Just realize, folks, that this violence out there isn't the majority on the right. It's the majority on the left. No matter what the media's trying to gaslight you or tell you. But there will be people that feel like they need to take things into their own hands. They consider themselves on the right because of the sheer frustration and reaching a boiling point. And I don't want that. I really don't want that at all. But it's likely, unfortunately, to happen. So, guys, this has been AllMinucOne, and I wish you all well.